CBS Sports HQ presented by Capital One. We are 12 days away until the start of the 2022 NFL season. This weekend, the final preseason games are being played. 4 games last night, 2 games Thursday night. Saturday retreated to 8. And we'll get to see some starters in action like Tom Brady for the Bucs, but overall this is a day for the backups to try and lock up their spots. All teams trying to avoid major injuries and big brawls. Expect Rams and Bengals to be a much tamer affair than what we saw midweek during joint practices. I mean, the Bengals might get whacked, but it won't be whack-a-Bengal like what we saw with Aaron Donald. Here to give us some picks, and they're always astute insights, Pick Six podcast regular Ryan Wilson and former quarterback Danny Kanell. Gentlemen, let's start at the top. Jaguars and the Falcons get things rolling at 3 p.m. Eastern time. All eyes on Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne here. Falcons are slight favorites, though, Ryan.
Yeah, I love that we're week 3 of the preseason, and we're all about making these picks about who are going to win and lose these football games. A little spoiler alert, we do a lot of over and unders here because this is incredibly tough. This is where you earn your money. As for this game in particular, you mentioned Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne. We'll see how long they play, how long Doug Peterson has them out there. Last week against the Steelers, that first unit looked fantastic on both sides of the ball. But again, if they're not out there, the conversation is, okay, what does the bottom of the roster look like with those players out there trying to earn jobs? Same on the other side with the Falcons, where Marcus Mariota will probably be the starter going into the season. Des Ridder has looked good in his first 2 preseason games, the 3rd-round pick, rookie out of Cincinnati, so we'll probably see a lot of him as well. All that said, I'm going over this number. The players at the back end of the roster aren't very good. We've seen a lot to be positive from Des Ridder, as you see here. I think he's going to put some points up in the second half, and maybe they sneak in a few points both sides in the first half. So I'll go over the number. I'm not quite comfortable taking a side, though.
Ryan. Yeah, don't you listen to the researchers? There was a graphic up there while you were talking so eloquently that said Jacksonville hasn't scored more than 15 points in a preseason game yet this preseason. Use it. Let them help you. Their defense has also been pretty good. I'm on the other side of that one, so I'll go ahead and I'll tackle the number itself, and I'll go ahead and take Jacksonville as the underdog here. Atlanta's coming off that game. They blew a 16-point lead, didn't score any points after that. I think Jacksonville, you will see a crisp, clean Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne probably get in, get out in that one. Plus, most of the games this preseason, it's been kind of fun, especially if you've been playing a little bit, putting a little bit of action on it, have been closer. So if I can get over a field goal, I'll go ahead and take Jacksonville in this spot, even though it's on the road.
Danny, I think you've had to put some money on it to make it a little bit fun. The joint practices have been more fun than actually watching some of these games. They've been taming in terms of what we've seen on the field compared to the joint practices. Next up, let's talk about the Super Bowl rematch between the Rams and the Bengals. I mean, not a lot of starters, if any, expected in this one. Wide receiver Lance McCutcheon, a guy that we keep hearing whispers about for the Rams as he tries to earn a spot on the roster. Bengals get the line edge here, though, Danny.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and lay the points with the Bengals on this one. I do think that fight lingers in everybody's mind, including the fans. And I think you'll see an energized crowd kind of waiting to see what happens. I think that gives the home team just a little bit of an edge. But I also like to tackle the over on this one. You mentioned the fact that Sean McVay started the trend. It's like, I don't care. I'm not playing any starters. Like, forget you guys. And Zach Taylor took it over to Cincinnati. So you're not going to see a lot of starters. And both coaches offensive-minded. Kind of trust them to still work on some new concepts, maybe sprinkle in some things, give some younger wide receivers chances to make plays. So I'll lean on the over on this one as well.
Danny, you just chastised me, and I'm taking your advice. I'm going under, and I see you take the over of 37.5 here on this Rams-Bengals game. I'm going under for one reason. I think, and Danny sort of alluded to it, I think Zach Taylor and Sean McVay and the respective teams are going to be standing still for 60 minutes of football to avoid anything close to what happened on the practice field when Aaron Donald went crazy and started swinging helmets. I think they want to avoid any potential for injuries. None of the starters are going to be out there anyway. Joe Burrow's not playing as he recovers from that appendectomy. He'll be fine for week 1, no doubt. And Sean McVay has a history of not playing these guys anyway. You mentioned Lance McCutcheon. That might be the most interesting storyline on the Rams side. Can the undrafted rookie wide receiver make the final roster? And on the other side, if you're looking for a storyline that doesn't involve throwing helmets at people, it could be the guard position, whether it's going to be Carmen Jackson, the second-day pick a few years ago for the Bengals, or Corden Volson, this year's draft pick. Who's going to win that interior offensive line job for the Bengals? Other than that, I don't expect a lot of points. I don't expect a lot of penalties. I expect everyone to be on their P's and Q's, so I'm going under.
Get in and get out. All right, Justin Fields and most of the Bears starters are slated to get somewhere between 25 and 30 snaps as they take on the Cleveland Browns, who are the deserved favorites even with their starters, out, Ryan.
Look, let's be honest. The Bears might end up being one of the worst teams in the NFL this season, and they have a lot of heavy lifting to do to change that perception. But they're getting 5 points against the Browns team that probably won't play anyone, because I would imagine Kevin Stefanski wants to keep most of these guys healthy since Deshaun Watson's not playing for the first 11 games anyway. I can't envision a situation where Jacoby Brissett goes out there and gets injured, and then what are you going to do? It'll be down to the Joshes, Dobbs and Rosen as your quarterback, and then a season that suddenly you're sort of holding on to, it's gone straight in the tank. So I'm going to take the Bears. You mentioned that the Bears starters are going to play for probably the first half. That includes Roquan Smith, who is betting on himself and coming back to play one more season. Justin Fields has a chance to iron out some of those kinks. And he's played well at times this preseason, but there also been the head scratchers. So I'm going to take those 5 points, although that 41.5 seems incredibly high.
Oh, man. I tell you, we don't even need a sports book. Ryan and I'll just bet each other because we've been on opposite sides. We can save some money on the juice and we'll just play for dinner or something like that. We'll just keep tabs on the total. I'm on the other side of this one in large part because of what you said, Jeremy, and you too, Ryan, about Justin Fields and the starters getting more action. Usually that would lead you to lean towards that team, but they are an atrocious unit right now. The pass protection's been rough. I feel so bad for Justin Fields because I worry about his career in general getting derailed by an organization which has failed to put much around him. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Browns here. And you mentioned the total getting a little too high. I'm on the under as well because I do think you'll see struggles. You got to remember, Jacoby Brissett is not your true starter. It's Deshaun Watson. Then you're getting down to third and potentially fourth stringers and Josh Dobbs and Josh Rosen. So I think you could see a little bit of a sloppy affair offensively all across the board. So I'll take the under as well.
Yeah, not sure how long we're going to see him, but Kevin Stefanski says Jacoby Brissett will start for the Cleveland Browns. But as you alluded to, Ryan, you want to keep him in bubble wrap, so to speak, so he probably won't be in the game for very long. All right, for the Tennessee Titans, they face the Cardinals, and lots of eyes on Treylon Burks and Malik Willis here. Burks has been working with the deep backup, so let's see if he can get some first-team reps. And for Willis, we'd like to see more from the pocket from him. Titans favored by less than a touchdown here, Danny.
The number's at what? Is it at 35, 35 and a half? I'm going over on this one. We've seen Kyler Murray out there calling plays. He's been pretty effective with it. We've seen, Malik Willis out there, a quarterback for the Titans, run around making plays. This number is just too low for me, so I'm going to attack the total in this one and go over just for the fact that these are NFL players. You will have guys out there trying to make the roster, which is something you mentioned. It actually gave me a rash because that's where I pretty much had to be on that bubble. And this week 3 preseason game was one where I was either going to get cut or make the team. And I know what it's like to play out of desperation. So I'll go ahead and take the over. I just think the number's too low.
Danny, the streak remains alive. I'm, of course, taking the under of that incredibly low 35. But, hey, listen, you make a fantastic point about the Week 4 preseason when you were playing in the league and what it means to people on that roster bubble. And also as a quarterback, there are guys in front of you blocking that you may not even know their names, and your head is on a swivel. And I wonder if that's going to play in the back of the mind, especially for a young quarterback like Malik Willis. Now, look, he's played with the second and third team for much of the preseason. And Treylon Burks, while been better over the training camp process, he wasn't so good early in minicamp, so we'll see how that development continues. I don't expect the Cardinals to do a whole bunch. Again, you want to avoid injury. Maybe you get a series or two at most if you have your starters out there at all. But I do wonder if the lingering effects of taking a big hit because you don't know the guy blocking for you might impact the way this game goes, and that's why I'm going to go under this 35 right now.
And you see the Titans 3-point favorites. All right, in Miami, a stomach bug is ripping through the Dolphins, so we could see a very thin roster here as they welcome the Eagles. And for Philly, one last chance for wide receiver Jalen Reagor to perhaps make the cut. The spread here was 2 points, so essentially a pick 'em. It's still at 2. But if Miami's roster is depleted here, Ryan.
So, stomach bug. We know what that means. Have you ever tried to do anything athletic with a stomach bug? I'm taking the Eagles +2. I'm taking the Eagles -20. I think this is going to be a huge ask for a Dolphins team that was so banged up, stomach bug-wise, that Mike McDaniel had to cancel practice. And some of the coaches were stomach bugged too. So look, I'm sort of joking. Hopefully everyone's okay and they're not too dehydrated. But it's hard to run fast and hit things and be athletic when your stomach's a tad upset. So hopefully the Pepto-Bismol is in full supply. And I have no real commentary on who's winning, playing for jobs and stuff, because I can't get over the fact that they had to cancel practice because of the severity of the stomach bug. And I'm going all in on the Eagles here.
So, Ryan, I was at Dolphins practice in person on Wednesday, the day before they came down with this stomach bug. For 3 days, I have been terrified that all of a sudden I'm not going to start feeling well. Like, I keep getting, like, I'm going to get sick. Thankfully, I haven't gotten it yet, knock on wood. The only thing that worries me here is, why are the Dolphins favored? Like, it doesn't make any sense. But for the first time in our segment today, I am in agreement with you. And even with the stomach bug issues aside, watching those two teams practice, it's still pretty clear to me, one is breaking in a brand new head coach and one isn't. And I know it's not like Sirianni's been there a long time, but it just looked cleaner, crisper. Things are still a little bit new. There's still some growing pains, I think, for the Dolphins team. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Eagles as well. I'm just perplexed as how the number is where it is. It just seems like a little too easy, but I'll go ahead and take the Eagles with you.
Yeah, and you talk about all that running and stuff when you have a stomach bug in that heat in South Florida. 10 times worse as well. So, yeah, take the Eagles all day long. All right. Commanders head to Baltimore for their preseason finale. And while the starters will see limited action, there is intrigue at the running back position for the Commanders, Danny. Brian Robinson seems to have surpassed Antonio Gibson. So that is a key storyline to watch there.
It absolutely is. And not only, roster spots, but starting positions and depth charts are formed here in this last preseason game. So it is taking everything that I have not to just go ahead and take the money line on Washington. And I'll tell you why. Because sometime this streak has to end where the Baltimore Ravens have not lost since 2015. It is one of the more remarkable streaks in the NFL as a whole. Had 22 straight games that the Ravens have won. I'm going to stay away from it. I'm tempted to do it, but I am going to tackle the under on this one. Ravens, one of the things I think that they do so well and why they win is there's a mentality. We're going to play great defense, and we know what they're going to do on the offensive side of the ball. No matter if it's Lamar Jackson, who is not probably going to play, or whoever's playing quarterback, they are going to run the football. And if one thing we know about Washington, again, no matter who's playing quarterback, the offense has been struggling somewhat as they've been trying to figure out, even challenging Carson Wentz, who's going to play for that starting quarterback position. I think this will be a lower scoring affair, so I'll take the under.
I love the under there, Danny. I'm actually going to take the Ravens at -6 because, as you point out, they can't lose in the preseason, and usually they win pretty convincingly. So Lamar's not going to play. Tyler Huntley will probably see a lot of that time. He does a great job of running that offense as Lamar would. We saw that last year when he had to start when Jackson was out with COVID and some injuries. That's the good news. On the other side, you mentioned it, Danny. What's this offense going to look like in Washington? We don't yet know. They're still trying to figure out who's going to be adding depth at the wide receiver position after Terry McLaurin. Is this the year Curtis Samuel finally breaks out? Can Jahan Dotson contribute right away? And then, of course, Carson Wentz. How long is he going to be the guy? So I'll go with the Ravens. I'll go with John Harbaugh. I'll go with Tyler Huntley. Isaiah Likely, if you want a player to watch, the tight end, the rookie out of Coastal Carolina, has been really fun this preseason. I'm rolling with the Ravens, even though it's -6.
22-game win streak. The line has dropped to 4.5, favoring the Ravens. And Danny, to your point about the money line, Commanders sitting at +180 on the money line if you wanted to do a little sprinkle on the upset. All right, we're going to get to see Tom Brady for the first time this season, but not likely for very long. The Bucs take on the Colts. Todd Bowles says anyone who's healthy is going to play. The Colts will play their starters for most of the first half, according to reports. Another tight line here with the total sitting at just over 40, Ryan.
Yeah, I'm going to hit the over all day long. I think Tom Brady, as most people our age does, they go on vacation right before school starts. He's got kids that are going to start school in a few weeks if they haven't started already, and he's taking a little vacation. The difference is that he's the best player in human history at the quarterback position, and they just sort of did it in the middle of training camp, which is peculiar. Something that probably never ever would have happened had he still been in New England. That's a story for another time. That said, we know one thing about Tom Brady. He loves proving people wrong, so I'm sure he's heard the doubters saying that he's taken off 11 days. He's going to be rusty. He still can't play. He's going to come out slinging. You mentioned Todd Bowles said some of the other starters starters will be out there, so we'll have his favorite weapons to throw the ball to. On the other side, that offense hasn't looked great in Indianapolis in terms of consistency, and I think this is the game where they get it together with Matt Ryan, rookie Alec Pierce, the wide receiver who's had a really good start to his training camp in preseason. And I think given that the Colts will probably play in the first half, and guys like Blaine Gabbert and Kyle Trask have things to prove as backups in Tampa Bay, I like the over 41.5.
I don't hate it. I like the Colts better, laying the 3. I think this team, you mentioned it right there, needs an offensive performance kind of to gain some confidence. Starters are going to play. Jonathan Taylor won't. We know what he means to that system, but this is about getting the pass game situated. Frank Reich is also 7-3-1 against the spread in the preseason as a head coach. So I think the Colts have a little bit more of a mindset of getting this win, more comfortable, getting those points in that first half when it matters. The Tom Brady effect, I don't think it matters in this game. You're going to see a very limited body from him, probably a series or two just to get his feet under him. He's not going to get touched. And then Kyle Trask has been very up and down. He was sacked 4 times the last game. So I think you'll see the Tampa Bay Bucs struggle a little bit in the second half offensively, but I like the Colts to lay the 3 here.
One of these teams is going to go winless in the preseason as they're both sitting at 0-2. The line moving, you can get it at 3, you can get it at 4, and if you're looking at the Bucs in terms of plus money on the money line, currently sitting at plus 158. Lastly, the nightcap is in Denver where the Broncos welcome the Vikings. The Broncos resting their starters here, so all eyes on this Vikings backup quarterback battle, which added some intrigue this week. Sean Mannion and Kellen Mond were the guys, and then the Vikings went out and acquired Nick Mullins. So it looks like this is where the fight is going to be and the storyline in this game in terms of a roster spot, Danny.
It is, and that was pretty eyebrow-raising because Kellen Mond was a draft pick the Vikings took last year. A lot of people thought he might even challenge Kirk Cousins. Now he's fighting for backup status here on the squad. I actually like the Broncos in this one, and for one reason only. It's one of the better home field advantages playing at altitude. Mile High City, it is real. I played there for 2 years. Every time you had a team come in from anywhere, they try to come in a day or two early to try to get acclimated. No matter what happened, they were always huffing and puffing. So I'll go ahead and take the Broncos. Also needing that first win, kind of to feel a little bit better about themselves. Home crowd, a little bit more invigorated. So I'll go ahead and take the Broncos here at home.
I'm going to take the under here, and again, it's only 35.5. But you saw the graphic there. The Vikings are 1-5 against the spread in their last 6 preseason games. That's not great. Last week we saw the Broncos only score 15 points in their loss. Also not great. And Danny touched on the quarterback situation in Minnesota. Kellen Mond, a guy that I don't like to say it out loud now, I liked a lot coming out of Texas A&M, has not lived up to the hype, and he might be on the roster bubble depending on what happens in this football game. And then the other side, no Russ Wilson, so you'll have Josh Johnson, who struggled a little bit last week, and Brett Rippon probably throwing most of the passes. All that said, no starters. Again, so much upheaval in terms of the continuity because you're playing with second, third, and even 4-teamers, guys who won't be on the roster a few hours after the game ends. I'm going to take the under of 35.5.
Ryan Wilson, Danny Kanell making NFL picks for us as the preseason winds down. 8 games on the slate today. And Danny, thanks for jumping in at the last second to help us out with the NFL segment today. Appreciate you.
Of course, anytime. We can just throw stuff at the board. Let's do it.
All right, let's recap those Saturday NFL picks. Jaguars, Falcons, Ryan's going over for that one. Ryan going on a lot of totals here. You see the over-unders on his side. The one game pick he does have for you is Chicago, taking the +5 versus the Browns. Danny liking Jacksonville, Cincinnati, and Cleveland for the points. And then you see their over-unders. And no real agreement there between the two as they went the other way for most of the picks. Danny liking Indianapolis at the 3 versus the Buccaneers. All right, as we